Hi guys, and welcome back to my Evilness podcast. Today we are going to be talking about the case of Jacob Wetterling. So this is another cold case that went unsolved for almost 30 years. Jacob was born on the 17th of February in 1978.
Today, October 12th, I am 5 feet tall. My whole name is Jacob Wetterling. My favorite food is steak. My favorite color is blue. My best friend is Aaron Larson. I don't really have a favorite song. My favorite game is Clue. My favorite thing to do most is watch football. What I want to be when I grow up is a football player. My favorite hobby is collecting football cards. I don't have a favorite book, and my newest friend is Gabe. I'm finished.
So that was a little home video of Jacob that he had filmed on the video camera. So sadly, Jacob was only 11 years old when he went missing on October 22nd, 1989. He lived in St. Joseph's in Minnesota. His parents were Jerry and Patty Wetterling. He had 4 siblings. Now, the day that Jacob went missing was a fairly typical morning. Jacob and his dad, Jerry, had gone fishing. They'd had a good time. Afterwards, they went back home to watch the start of the Vikings game. This started at noon. After the game had ended, Jerry had the boys, Trevor and Jacob, go outside with him to kick the football around. Patty and Jerry had plans to go to a dinner party that night. They left the house at about 5:30 p.m. This dinner party was at a friend's house who lived about 25 minutes away from the Wetterlings. It wasn't going to be a very late night, and as they wouldn't be gone for too long, they decided to let the kids stay home alone, even though their eldest daughter, Amy, wasn't there that night. Jacob had gotten his parents' permission to have a friend come and hang out that night, so he called his best friend, Aaron, who came right over because they didn't have school the following day. Patty and Jerry phoned the house when they arrived at the dinner party and gave the kids the phone number just in case they needed to contact them. In the middle of the dinner party, Patty and Jerry received a phone call from Trevor asking if they could ride their bikes down to the video rental store. Which is quite funny. Some people might think a video rental store, why, when you could just get it online, but we used to actually have shops where we could go and rent videos. However, Patty was a cautious mother, and she said no, she didn't want them to leave the house on their own, so they needed to find something to do at home. Trevor asked if he could speak to his father. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but typical kids. But Jerry actually decided to go against Patty's wishes and told them that they could ride to the video store. He said so long as they took big flashlights so they could be seen by any oncoming traffic, then they were good to go. It was starting to get dark, and there was a lot of fields and paddocks around their house. It was country, not suburban area. More of a country area, I should say, rather than suburban. So only 45 minutes after getting off the phone with them, another call came in for Patty and Jerry. This time it was from one of their neighbours saying you need to come home immediately. They said it had something to do with Jacob and him being missing. Jerry ran to his wife and said, "Jacob's missing, we need to go now." The neighbour then called police and told them that Jacob was taken when he and his brothers were coming back from the video store. According to Trevor and Aaron, who were both terrified by this event, which, as he would be, any child would be, any adult would be. So Trevor and Aaron said that the 3 of them were riding home and they were stopped by a man who approached them wearing a black mask and holding a gun.
I remember it like it happened yesterday. initially, when we were going down to Tom Thumb, there's a little field to the left-hand side of the road. I remember hearing a little rustle, it's kind of tall grass. A kind of a shiver went through me, just the wind or an animal, but just something didn't feel right. It was so dark out that you couldn't see anything, and I just remember the first thing I saw was kind of the flash of the gun. I mean, it was like a silver kind of flash. I figured it was just some high school kid or something just kind of pulling a joke on us. And he told us he had a gun, and we had to turn off our flashlights. So obviously
that was Aaron Larson, recounting his version from what he remembers. So the man then told them to get off their bikes and lay on the ground with their faces down. He asked all of them for their ages, and he looked at them all. First, he decided that he didn't want Trevor, so he sent him running off into the woods and told him if he looked back, he would shoot him. Next, he looked at the two remaining boys, Jacob and Aaron. Deciding Jacob was the one that he wanted, he sent Aaron running off the same way that he had Trevor. He also told Aaron if he looked back or tried to help his friend, he would shoot him. Aaron said he ran as fast as he could to try and catch up with Trevor.
I ran as fast as I could to catch up with Trevor. And then, we went maybe 100 yards, and you look back, there's nobody there at that point. Looking back, me and Jacob are the same age, we both look alike, and it's pitch black, and you probably couldn't really see our faces. Always had to live with that, I was the last person, with him. That's 50-50 odds as far as, me or him, and, why did he choose him and not me? I mean, I remember sitting in their house that night in their living room. They have a big picture window, and you could see everybody pull up, and, all through the whole night, I just remember thinking, sooner or later he's going to come up, and he's going to get out of the car, and this will all be over.
When the police heard this story, they did not believe the boys. They thought that the three boys had been playing with a gun and one of them had accidentally shot Jacob, and the other two were covering it up by making up a story about a man with a mask and a gun. However, law enforcement did decide to start searching in the area where the boys said Jacob was taken from. Obviously, time is crucial, as it always is when it comes to missing children. So Jacob's family did all that they could to get his name out there. Law enforcement officials were helping them with this by putting posters up. The media had started covering Jacob's story, and police were getting inundated with leads. This really affected the community. Everybody wanted to help find Jacob and work all of this out. Also, to offer support to the Wetterlings. There were times the Wetterlings would have around 50 people at their house looking for Jacob. For the first couple of weeks during the investigation, it was all that people were talking about. Jacob Wetterling was a household name for the worst reasons. The word was spreading further that Jacob was missing, and many more people reached out to try and help. Unfortunately, as with so many cases, the media slowly dropped down their coverage on Jacob until they just finally stopped it altogether. The Wetterlings, though, were intent on not letting people forget Jacob. They continued following up on leads, done public speeches, sometimes I can't read my own writing. Anything they could think of that got the word out, just to remember Jacob. In 2010, blogger Joy Baker was looking for something to write about and came across the Jacob Wetterling case. This case consumed her. She contacted Paddy and started putting together her own kind of investigation. Through her research, she found that 5 boys had all went missing around the same area between late 1986 and early 1987. Jared Skerrill, I believe it is, was a boy who had been abducted 9 months before Jacob had went missing. This abduction had taken place in Cold Spring, which is just down the road from where the Wetterlings live. It was only 6 days before his 13th birthday, at most 3 blocks from his house. A man in a car had approached him as he was walking down the street. The car pulled up and stopped, and Jared started to give the man directions. While he was doing this, the driver jumped out of the car, grabbed him by the shoulders, and pushed him into the car. He told Jared he has a gun and isn't afraid to use it. Jared was driven for around 5 miles and sexually assaulted by this man, who then let him go as long as he ran away and never looked back. Which was basically exactly what Trevor and Aaron had said the man had told them. Descriptions given by Trevor and Aaron and also Jared were remarkably similar, average height and weight, and had a low-key raspy voice. On the 28th of October 2015, 26 years later, a man by the name of Danny Heinrich was named as a person of interest in the case, and he was then arrested. Danny was 53 years old. Danny was questioned by the FBI the same year that Jacob was taken, but there wasn't enough evidence linking him with Jacob, and as a result of this, he was released. However, Danny's DNA was found to be a match for the abduction of Jared by DNA evidence obtained from Jared's jumper. Unfortunately, by the time they had the DNA match for Danny off Jared's jumper, the statute of limitations had expired and they were not able to arrest him or hold him accountable for his crime. It did, however, give them a good enough reason to search his house, which, during this search, police discovered child pornography, and so Danny was immediately arrested. Danny agreed to cooperate with authorities. On the 1st of September 2016, Danny finally showed authorities where he had buried Jacob. 27 years later, Jacob was exactly where Danny had left him. Danny confessed in court that he had drove Jacob, who he had handcuffed, from St. Joseph's to Paynesville, where he molested the boy and then murdered him. He told the judge, "I was driving on a dead-end road when I noticed 3 children on their bicycles with a flashlight." Jacob asked him, "What did I do wrong?" Danny describes. A rather odd plea deal Danny was offered or was given. He basically gave them the location of Jacob's body in exchange for not being charged with the murder. However, Danny still faces 20 years in prison for the pornography charges on which he did plead guilty. The Wetterlings did agree to this bizarre plea deal, basically to bring an end to their vigorous search. Jacob's remains were left about 30 miles from his house, and law enforcement were able to confirm his identity via dental records. On September 3rd, 2016, the family made the grave announcement to the public that Jacob's remains had been found. So I hear you asking, how did this happen? It's strange as it couldn't really be premeditated, as the boys being there, they didn't plan that, so Danny couldn't have known. Danny said that the night he had killed Jacob, he was driving around without a clear idea of where he was going or what he was doing, and he just came across the boys. He saw they were riding bikes and they had a flashlight. He said he parked his car, put on a mask and waited for the boys to approach him, abducting Jacob at gunpoint, handcuffing him and sitting him in the front passenger seat of his car. It was then a crying Jacob had asked him, "What did I do wrong?" Danny then drove Jacob to Paynesville, 30 miles away, and Danny took him to a gravel pit outside of town. He got Jacob out of the car, removed his clothes, took him to a grove of trees where he had sexually assaulted him. Danny said he was able to avoid police by listening to a scanner. He heard police sirens, which weren't anything to do with him, but he thought they might be coming for him. He got scared, panicked, and that's when he decided to shoot Jacob. Jacob said, "I'm cold, take me home," and started to cry. Danny actually choked up when describing how he saw a patrol car come down the highway. Danny told Jacob to turn around. He raised his revolver to Jacob's head, but the gun jammed. Jacob was still in the same position. Danny said he pulled the trigger a second time, and Jacob fell to the ground. One positive that did come from this case, in 1994, the Jacob Wetterling Act was passed. This was the first law to institute a state sex offender register, and after Jacob's abduction, Patty and Jerry formed the